Welcome back. We're picking up where we left off.
Right.
Today we start the Book of Esther, and this deep dive will actually be the first of two parts. We decided to split the narrative right at the end of chapter 4.
Which is a very natural breaking point.
It is. So we have a specific agenda for you over the next hour. First, we will cover the narrative and historical overview. We're going to explore the Persian court. We will examine King Ahasuerus and the whole political world of the text.
Yeah, setting that stage is crucial.
Definitely. Second, we will look at the textual and canonical problem. We will discuss the surviving ancient versions. Third, we will define the genre. We will look at what scholars call the diaspora novella.
Right, what kind of book this actually is.
Exactly. Fourth, we will weigh the question of historicity. We will compare remembered Persian history with literary invention. And finally, we will examine gender. We will look at Vashti's refusal and, of course, Esther's character arc.
And then next time, in part 2, we will cover the big reversal.
Yes, the killings in chapter 9, the festival of Purim, all of that. But we begin now with the narrative and the historical setting.
Well, we really must start with the man on the throne. The Hebrew text calls him Ahasuerus.
Right.
But this figure is almost certainly Xerxes I. He ruled the Persian Empire from 486 to 465 BCE.
And he has quite the historical reputation.
Oh, absolutely. This king tried to finish the campaign his father Darius had started against Greece, and, well, he failed. Xerxes assembled just a massive invasion force.
The logistics of it were staggering.
They were. He crossed the Hellespont, he marched his army straight into Europe, he even managed to burn Athens, but then he suffered severe military defeats.
Right, his navy was destroyed at Salamis. That was in 480 BCE.
Exactly. And then his army was defeated at Plataea a year later, so he totally failed to conquer the Greek city-states. He retreated back to his empire.
So the text places the opening of chapter 1 in the 3rd year of his reign. That places these events right before the failed Greek campaign. And the book opens with this massive royal spectacle. Xerxes throws a banquet, and it lasts 180 days.
Which is just an incredible amount of time.
It really is. He displays his wealth to the nobles, he displays it to the army officers, he includes the provincial governors of Persia and Media, and the text tells us his empire spans 127 provinces.
Yes.
It stretches all the way from India to Kush. So we are looking at an empire of immense scale. Just the logistics of a 6-month banquet for provincial governors, I mean, it is difficult to comprehend.
Well, the empire was governed from Susa, and Susa was one of several royal capitals. The court culture there relied entirely on hierarchy and display.
Right, it was all about showing off power.
Exactly. And 180 days is a full half year, so this was not a continuous meal. It was more of a prolonged political summit.
That makes sense.
Yeah, governors traveled from the edges of the known world. They viewed the royal treasury. They viewed the military readiness. Scholars think this was likely the planning phase for that invasion of Greece.
Okay, so after this prolonged display, the king holds a second banquet. This one lasts 7 days. And it is for the palace staff right there in Susa.
Right.
On the 7th day, the king becomes drunk. He summons Queen Vashti. He demands she wear her royal crown. He basically wants to display her beauty to all the assembled men.
And Vashti refuses.
She just says no.
She does, and the text provides no internal reasoning for her refusal. We do not hear her thoughts. We only see the refusal and then the reaction.
Right, the text gives us this sudden panic among the king's advisors.
Oh, they totally freak out.
They do. They view this as a serious matter of state. They warn the king about the political fallout. They claim women across the entire empire will hear of this.
Right.
And they claim these women will then disobey their husbands. So the advisors recommend immediate action. Vashti is deposed. She's banished permanently.
And an empire-wide decree is issued. It commands every man to be master of his own house.
Which is just a striking overreaction.
It is a deliberate overreaction by the author. It highlights the absurdity of the court. So the king requires a new queen. An empire-wide search begins.
And the text describes what is basically a coercive system.
Yes. Beautiful young virgins are gathered into the harem at Susa. They undergo 12 months of beauty treatments.
The text specifies 6 months with oil of myrrh.
Right.
And it specifies another 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics.
Which represents an enormous expenditure of resources on these women. So each young woman spends a single night with the king for evaluation. She goes in the evening, she returns in the morning to a second harem.
And if the king does not call her back by name well, she remains in that second harem permanently.
Exactly. She becomes a concubine. She just lives out her life in isolation.
So this is where Esther enters the narrative. Her Hebrew name is Hadassah. She is a Jewish orphan,
Right.
and she is raised by her older cousin Mordecai. Now, Mordecai holds a post at the king's gate.
Which suggests an administrative role within the court. It is not just a place to sit, it is a position of access.
Right. And Mordecai instructs Esther to hide her Jewish identity. She complies with this instruction. She undergoes the evaluation process, and she wins the king's favor above all the others.
She becomes queen.
Yes.
Oh.
And her ethnicity remains a complete secret.
Then the narrative introduces a subplot. Mordecai uncovers an assassination plot. 2 royal eunuchs plan to kill the king.
Their names are Bigthan and Teresh.
Right, they guard the threshold. Mordecai reports the plot to Esther. Esther tells the king. She makes sure to credit Mordecai. The conspirators are investigated.
The plot is confirmed.
Yes, and the 2 eunuchs are executed. The whole event is recorded in the royal chronicles. But Mordecai receives no reward.
Right. The narrative just drops this detail entirely. The lack of reward is left unresolved. It just hangs there in the background of the story.
Which brings us to chapter 3. We hit the second major crisis. The king promotes a man named Haman. He elevates him to the highest court position.
And the king commands everyone at the gate to bow down to Haman. But Mordecai refuses.
He refuses to bow.
The text implies Mordecai's Jewish identity is the reason. But there is a deeper historical layer here. The text identifies Haman as an Agagite, and this is a crucial detail for the intended audience.
It really is. The term Agagite signals an ancient enmity. It points all the way back to the first book of Samuel. Specifically, it points to chapter 15.
Right.
In that text, King Saul fights the Amalekites. The Amalekite king is named Agag. God instructs Saul to destroy the Amalekites completely, but Saul spares Agag. He spares the best of the livestock, too.
And this disobedience costs Saul his dynasty.
Exactly. The prophet Samuel hacks Agag to pieces. Now, Mordecai is from the tribe of Benjamin. Saul was also from the tribe of Benjamin. The genealogy in chapter 2 explicitly links Mordecai to Kish.
And Kish was Saul's father.
Right. So Haman the Agagite represents the Amalekite line. The author uses these genealogies to frame a historical conflict. It is a blood feud reaching across 5 centuries.
So Haman reacts with disproportionate fury. He does not just want to punish Mordecai. He decides to destroy the entire Jewish people.
He approaches the king, and he uses a classic political tactic. He tells the king a certain scattered people have different laws.
Right.
He claims they do not keep the king's laws. He argues it is not in the king's interest to tolerate them.
He dehumanizes them by remaining vague. He never actually names them.
Exactly. Then he offers a massive sum of silver. He offers 10,000 talents of silver to the royal treasury to fund their destruction, and the king agrees. He just hands Haman his signet ring.
And that signet ring transfers royal authority. It gives Haman the power to write a law in the king's name. So an irrevocable edict is sealed. It orders the annihilation of every Jew in the empire.
Men, women, and children are all to be killed.
And the date is set for the 13th day of the month of Adar. Haman chooses this date by casting lots.
Right.
The text uses the Akkadian loanword for these lots. That word is Purim. So this provides the origin of the festival name.
The edict goes out through the famous Persian postal system. The relay riders carry the decree to every single province, and the city of Susa is just thrown into confusion.
Which makes chapter 4 the absolute hinge of the narrative. Mordecai learns of the edict. He mourns publicly. He puts on sackcloth and ashes. He goes out right into the middle of the city.
But Esther remains isolated inside the palace.
She does. She
Yeah.
does not know about the edict. Her maids tell her Mordecai is out there in sackcloth, so she sends clothes to him. She wants to remove his mourning garments.
But he refuses them. He sends her a copy of the written decree, and he tells her to go to the king. He tells her to beg for her people.
And Esther responds by explaining the mortal danger of that request. The Persian court protocol is extremely strict.
Very strict. No one may approach the king in the inner court unsummoned. The penalty for doing so is death.
Right. The only exception occurs if the king extends his golden scepter.
And Esther notes she has not been summoned to the king in 30 days. This highlights her precarious standing. I mean, she is the queen, but she lacks direct access. She could be executed simply for walking into the room.
So Mordecai delivers a severe warning. He sends a message back to her. He tells her that her silence will not save her. He tells her that if she remains silent, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place.
Right.
But she and her father's house will perish. And then he delivers the most famous line in the book. He suggests she may have come to royal position for exactly such a time as this.
He places the entire weight of her people's survival directly on her current political position.
And Esther makes her choice. She sends a reply to Mordecai. She asks him to gather the Jews of Susa. She asks him to fast for her for 3 days. She commits to approaching the king against the law.
She accepts the risk. She states, "If I perish, I perish."
The narrative tension in chapter 4 is just palpable. We leave Esther preparing to break the law on pain of death. So we pivot now from the story to the analytical questions.
Yes.
We have 4 scholarly clusters to examine for you today. These are text, genre, historicity, and gender. We will start with the text. The absolute terror of Esther's situation makes the author's choices regarding the Hebrew text striking.
It really does. The most crucial fact about the Hebrew text of Esther is its silence. It never mentions God.
Not even once.
Not once. It contains no divine name. It uses no titles for God. It includes no explicit prayer. It lacks any references to the Torah. It does not mention Jerusalem. It does not mention the temple.
Right.
The text notes that Esther fasts in chapter 4, but it never says she prays. It never says the Jews of Susa pray. They only fast. It reads as an entirely secular telling of a survival story.
And this silence was deeply troubling to ancient readers. I mean, imagine you were an ancient Jewish reader. You look for comfort in this book regarding the survival of your people, and you find zero mention of God.
It is unsettling.
This absence bothered the early communities, and the Septuagint version proves this. The Septuagint adds 6 substantial passages. These passages do not exist in the Hebrew text.
Now, the Septuagint is the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures. In Esther's case, it functions as an expanded edition. It completely alters the tone of the book.
It really does.
The Greek editions change the theology fundamentally. They insert piety into the secular framework. They include a prophetic dream for Mordecai at the very beginning of the book.
Right. The dream anticipates a cosmic conflict. It features 2 dragons fighting. And the text later identifies these dragons as Mordecai and Haman.
Exactly. The editions also include the full text of Haman's edict. They include long, agonizing prayers by both Mordecai and Esther.
Yes, in her prayer, Esther explicitly appeals to God.
She expresses horror at her situation. She claims she hates the crown on her head. She claims she hates marrying an uncircumcised Gentile.
The editions also include the full text of the king's counter-edict later on.
Right. And finally, they include an interpretation of Mordecai's dream at the end. This confirms God's active providence.
The scholar John Levinson has written extensively on this. Levinson argues the Greek editions perform real theological repair work.
That is a great phrase for it.
Yeah, they transform a book silent about God into an explicitly pious story. They take a narrative focused on political luck and human cleverness, and they reframe it as a story of explicit divine rescue. The editions ensure the reader understands God is driving the events.
We also have a third ancient version. This is known as the Alpha text. It is sometimes called the Lucianic text. It is a Greek text, but it is shorter than the standard Septuagint version.
And it contains different additions and different omissions.
Right. Scholars actively debate the origins of the Alpha text. Some argue it preserves an older Hebrew tradition that is now lost. Others argue it is a later recension. This remains a really complex, text-critical debate.
We basically have 3 distinct versions of Esther circulating in antiquity. Each presents a slightly different theological profile.
Yes.
Which raises a specific analytical question for us. We see this massive ancient divergence. Does this imply early communities viewed texts as living traditions?
Oh, definitely.
Did they view them as traditions requiring theological updates rather than fixed historical artifacts? Like if the text lacked God, they simply added God.
It implies exactly that. The communities translating and transmitting these texts were not operating with modern notions of textual fixity. They were shaping the theology for their contemporary audience.
Right.
When a text lacked the expected markers of piety, the scribal tradition felt authorized to supply them. The text was fluid. It was adaptable to the theological needs of the community.
And this fluidity led directly to canon debates. The early rabbis debated whether this book belonged in the Bible at all.
The rabbinic debates in the Talmud are very clear on this. The rabbis questioned whether Esther, quote, defiles the hands.
Right, which is the technical rabbinic phrase for scriptural status. If a scroll defiles the hands, it is sacred. It requires ritual washing after handling.
Exactly. And some rabbis argued Esther did not defile the hands. They argued it lacked the necessary divine inspiration. We see a similar hesitation at Qumran. No fragment of Esther was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have fragments of every other book of the Hebrew Bible from Qumran. We do not have Esther.
Now, the absence at Qumran might also involve calendar disputes.
Oh.
The Qumran community used a strict 364-day solar calendar.
Right.
But the festival of Purim is tied to a lunar calendar, So a community strictly adhering to a solar calendar might reject a text mandating a lunar festival. They would view the festival as totally illegitimate.
That is a very strong scholarly hypothesis. The Qumran sect was rigid regarding calendar observance. A book establishing a new, non-Torah festival on a lunar schedule would be highly problematic for them.
We also see ambivalence in Christian history. Martin Luther explicitly wished the book did not exist.
You really do.
He disliked its violence. He disliked its silence about God. He felt it had too much heathen unnaturalness. He did not want it in the canon.
And modern Bibles reflect this complicated transmission history. Catholic and Orthodox canons retain the Greek editions. They treat them as deuterocanonical. They integrate them into the text or place them in a separate section.
While Protestant and Jewish Bibles retain the shorter Hebrew version, they reject the Greek editions entirely.
Right.
We shift here from established scholarship to synthesis. The synthesis suggests the silence in the Hebrew text is deliberate literary craft. It is not a mistake. The author deliberately chose not to mention God. The author wanted the silence to be deafening.
This moves us seamlessly into our next scholarly cluster. We must look at genre. We must define what kind of book Esther is.
Right.
The scholarly consensus classifies Esther as a diaspora novella. It is also called a court tale. It is a self-contained prose narrative. It features a Jewish figure navigating a foreign royal court.
And the protagonist faces a severe threat. The protagonist overcomes it through wisdom and circumstance. We have clear biblical parallels for this genre.
We do.
Daniel chapters 1 through 6 fit this genre perfectly. Daniel navigates the Babylonian and Persian courts. The Joseph narrative in Genesis fits this genre as well. Joseph navigates the Egyptian court.
Right. In these texts, the protagonist rises to prominence in a Gentile setting. The protagonist often conceals their identity initially.
And court rivals generate a life-threatening crisis. The protagonist survives through interpretation, wisdom, and timing.
The structural mechanics of the diaspora novella rely on dramatic reversal. The mechanism designed to destroy the hero ultimately destroys the villain. This structural reversal is called peripeteia.
Right.
The Book of Esther is carefully constructed around this mechanism. John Levinson points out the book's architectural doubling. The text features 2 banquets hosted by the king in chapter 1.
It features 2 banquets hosted by Esther in chapters 5 and 7.
Yes. It features 2 lists of the king's servants. It features 2 sleepless nights for the king. It features 2 decrees regarding the Jews.
This doubling creates a distinct mirror effect. The first half of the book sets up the crisis. The second half mirrors the first half, but reverses the outcomes. It is intentional, highly stylized literary design.
It is brilliant. The scholar Kenneth Craig reads Esther through the theory of the literary carnivalesque.
Right, which draws on Mikhail Bakhtin.
Exactly. The carnivalesque uses comic excess. It uses social inversion. It uses drunkenness and feasting to subvert authority. The numbers in Esther fit this theory perfectly. They are stylized and absurd.
The king throws a banquet for 180 days. The gallows Haman builds are 75 feet tall. The king rules 127 provinces, but he issues a frantic legal decree just because his wife will not attend his party.
The carnivalesque reading argues the text mocks the Persian Empire. The empire appears omnipotent. It demands complete submission, but the text reveals it to be arbitrary and foolish.
The laws of the Medes and Persians are famously unchangeable, yet the king issues these unchangeable decrees based on drunken whims or financial bribes.
Right. The social hierarchy is turned upside down. The powerful are humiliated. The marginalized triumph.
But this raises a point of tension for us. How do we reconcile a genre built on comic excess with the very real historical trauma of diaspora communities?
It is a fair question.
I mean, these communities faced actual annihilation. The threat of genocide is real in Jewish history. Reading it as a comedy seems somewhat discordant with the stakes.
That tension is central to understanding the book. We reconcile it through the concept of narrative reticence. This specific genre avoids direct divine intervention. It does not use covenant language.
It does not feature prophetic voices like Isaiah or Jeremiah thundering from the heavens.
Exactly. It shows providence working quietly. It works through human cleverness. It works through timing and irony. The comedy serves as a survival mechanism. It reduces the terrifying imperial power to an absurdity.
Right.
Laughter becomes a form of resistance against annihilation. If you can laugh at the emperor, well, he loses his absolute power over your mind.
That makes total sense. And this discussion of genre brings us to historicity. We are classifying this as a historical novella. That implies a mix of fact and fiction.
The world the text describes is grounded in historical reality. The author clearly knew Achaemenid Persian administration. The text accurately describes the system of satrapies. It accurately describes the postal and courier system using relay horses. The author knew the layout of the palace at Susa. The setting is not a fantasy realm. It is meticulously rendered.
However, the narrative details strain against Greek and Persian sources. Herodotus provides a detailed account of Xerxes, and Herodotus lists a queen named Amestris.
Yes.
He does not list Vashti. He does not list Esther. Amestris remained a powerful, terrifying figure throughout Xerxes' reign. There is simply no historical room for Esther's rise to queenship in the timeline Herodotus provides.
The plot mechanics also stretch credulity. The empire-wide beauty pageant is a literary device. Gathering virgins from 127 provinces is wildly impractical.
It does not align with Persian administrative practices.
No, it doesn't. Furthermore, Persian records count 20 to 30 satrapies. They do not count 127 provinces. The number is an exaggeration meant to convey vastness.
We must also look at the characters' names. They strongly resemble mythological figures.
They do.
Mordecai resembles Marduk. Marduk is the patron god of Babylon. Esther resembles Ishtar. Ishtar is the Babylonian goddess of love and war.
Right, and Haman resembles Humbin. Humbin is an Elamite deity. The names seem coded.
So the author likely worked with names echoing Mesopotamian mythology.
Yes, the conflict between Mordecai and Haman mirrors ancient mythological conflicts between Babylonian and Elamite gods. The author uses these resonances to build a literary world. The author is not attempting to record strict chronological history.
Right, the text uses historical and mythological elements to serve a theological purpose. So the majority scholarly position states the book is a historical novella. It anchors an invented plot in a realistic historical setting.
But there is a minority position. Some credentialed scholars try to locate Esther in the gaps of Herodotus.
They try to identify Vashti with minor historical figures.
Right. They attempt to harmonize the biblical text with secular history by finding slight overlaps. The minority stance reacts against settled scholarship. It stems from a desire to defend the text's strict historical accuracy.
But the consensus remains firm. The text is primarily a work of historical fiction. It is designed to teach theological and political truths about living in the diaspora.
Exactly.
Now, if we classify this strictly as a historical novella, we must ask an interpretive question. Does it change the value of the text for a religious reader? Or does the truth of the text lie precisely in its literary mechanics rather than its historical literalism?
The truth lies in the mechanics. The text teaches how to survive in exile. It teaches how to navigate hostile power structures when God appears silent.
Right.
Its value is in its psychological and sociological accuracy regarding diaspora life. Its value does not depend on its adherence to royal chronologies. The theological truths remain potent regardless of the historicity of the 180-day banquet.
That is a powerful way to frame it. Our final scholarly cluster focuses on gender. We are looking specifically at Vashti and Esther. Recent scholarship provides some compelling new angles on these characters.
The scholarship on gender in Esther is very significant. Sidney White has done foundational work here. Older readings treated Vashti as simply insubordinate.
She was viewed as a negative example of a wife.
Right. Modern feminist scholarship reads her refusal as resistance. She declines to be an object displayed to drunk men. She asserts her dignity against imperial command.
The rabbinic tradition actually adds a disturbing layer here. The Midrash suggests she was ordered to wear only the crown.
Yes.
Her refusal triggers a patriarchal panic in the text. The king's advisors fear a widespread rebellion of women. The court uses comic disproportion to address a domestic dispute.
They issue a decree demanding every man be the ruler of his own house. The empire mobilizes its legal apparatus just to force wives to obey their husbands.
The text mocks the fragility of male authority. The most powerful men in the world are terrified by one woman saying no.
Esther's arc provides a sharp contrast. She begins the book in an entirely passive state. She's gathered, she's evaluated in a coercive system, she is chosen.
She complies with Mordecai's orders to hide her identity. She has no independent voice in the first 3 chapters. She simply does what she is told.
This scholar, Michael Fox, studies character and ideology in Esther. Fox points out that chapter 4 changes everything. Mordecai tells her she might be raised up for such a time as this.
Right.
Fox notes the text contextualizes this line. It is a persuasion tactic. It is spoken to a frightened relative. It is not a divine oracle descending from heaven. Mordecai is guessing at providence.
And Esther responds with caution. Her caution is based on her precarious political position. She has not been summoned in a month. She knows the law regarding the inner court.
We see a clear scholarly disagreement here. Fox emphasizes human responsibility and moral courage. Greek edition readers emphasize divine providence orchestrating her actions. The Greek text makes God the primary actor.
But Esther's initial hesitation does not represent a lack of faith. It represents a highly accurate reading of her political reality. She understands the danger. The Hebrew text leaves the decision entirely in human hands.
There is no burning bush. There is no angelic visitor.
Esther's line, "If I perish, is her first self-determined action. She asserts her agency. She accepts the mortal consequences.
She moves from being an object acted upon by the empire to a subject acting against the empire. The fast she calls for is a communal act of solidarity. But the execution of the plan rests solely on her shoulders.
She must walk into the throne room alone. She claims her power in that moment." We pivot now to our devotional reflection. We want to take these scholarly threads and weave them into our lived experience as Latter-day Saints.
It is so applicable.
The book of Esther, specifically its Hebrew version, hides God's name.
Okay.
It records no prayers, records no revelations, yet Esther acts with intense moral courage. She steps into the dark based on covenant loyalty.
Right.
This connects directly to how we navigate discipleship in our own lives. It is a central theme in our Come Follow Me studies. We often read the scriptures looking for overt miracles. We want the parted sea. We want the voice from heaven.
We want the absolute certainty of a prophetic oracle.
But Esther gives us a different model of faith. It gives us a model of silent obedience in a secular world. Esther operates in a season where God's voice is not overt.
She relies on her understanding of her people. She relies on her sense of duty. She relies on her moral compass.
And this links powerfully to following Jesus Christ. We do not always get a burning bush. We do not always get an explicit answer telling us exactly what to do in our careers, our families, or our communities.
Like Esther, Christ calls us to act in faith anyway. He asks us to bring our agency to the altar.
Esther assesses the political reality. She recognizes the severe danger. She chooses to act for the salvation of her people without a guarantee of success. She states, "If I perish, I perish." It is an act of total consecration.
It really is.
Think about the silence of the text. The ancient author deliberately hid God's name to emphasize human agency. So how might we recognize the unwritten presence of Christ in the seemingly secular mechanics of our own daily lives?
We navigate bureaucracies. We navigate workplaces. We navigate complex political systems.
Right. And Christ's hand might not be visible in dramatic interventions. It might be visible in the quiet courage. He inspires within us to act righteously in those spaces. He works through our timing. He works through our willingness to speak up when it is difficult.
Yes.
Next time Esther walks into the throne room, we will examine the dramatic reversal of fortune. We'll examine Haman's fall. We will examine the theology of a hidden God. We will look at the difficult violence in chapter 9. We will look at how the Festival of Purim memorializes these events. Until then, consider the spaces in your life where you are called to act without complete certainty.